All right, folks, welcome to Notary Governance Call for the day of July 6th. Excited to have you all here. As usual, lots to chat about, so we're going to get started right away. Thank you for those of you that were able to make it live, and for those of you that are catching the recording, don't forget to join the Slack channel and participate in any conversations there or in GitHub that you're interested in. So we'll start out with our sort of usual, and I'll try to make this part quicker this time because I think there's a lot more interesting conversation to be had, but quick updates on general state of DataCap and flow. And then we have some interesting topics in each of the remaining sort of topics or topic areas, large dataset notaries, closing out for the elections, and then a couple of open issues that have been filed or are relevant to our community to cover. And before we dive into this, actually, extending a warm welcome to the new notaries that are slowly starting to get confirmed on chain. I know some of you are already joining this call. Some of you are watching this recording because it's an inconvenient time for you, but you'll be there at the next call. So welcome to the community, and looking forward to having you as stakeholders here. First up, some updates on the DataCap side of things. Only 3 allocations went through from manual applications on GitHub. I think in general, like the rate of application creation, submission, and acceptance is just a lot slower on GitHub right now, or was at least for the last 4 to 6 weeks. We've seen that pattern where like during the elections, I think it just went down. And then also in general, like the net new clients are still growing, but many of them are coming through the automated verifier. And even now, there's only like 8 sort of pending applications, whereas prior to the elections, that number was much bigger. But for those of you that do have open issues assigned to you, please definitely check GitHub and make sure that you're responding to them. Quick overview on distribution of DataCap across our different sort of steps in the flow. The number for the amount of DataCap that's been given to clients has gone up correspondingly by about 10 terabytes in the last 2 weeks, where across the 435 or so verified clients in our ecosystem, just shy of 300 are automatically verified today. And of those allocations, the utilization of the DataCap is going up quite a bit quicker, actually. And so that number has climbed a fair amount over the last month, where we were hovering around the 10% mark of used DataCap, and now it's climbing past 14%. So it's great to see that clients are actually able to leverage the DataCap that they're receiving. And so excited to think about ways with you as well to make that easier, to ensure that the DataCap that's being handed out is being leveraged and clients continue to make the best use of this network as possible. Average time to DataCap continues to go down. Literally every time I edit this slide, it goes down 3 to 4 hours. I suspect that that's because the ratio of the clients that are using automated verification is higher and continues to increase relative to those that are coming in through GitHub. As you can see at the table below, the time to the first response from a notary is about 10.5 days, and then the time to getting DataCap from that notary is about 4 days after that. And that's somewhat relative to the fact that also, automated verification happens in 1 epoch or 2 epochs, like 30 seconds to a minute. And so as long as a lot of those applications keep coming from there, our average time to DataCap will look relatively lower. But we should start thinking about ways in which we want to pull these numbers down to ensure that as a community, clients are being served, like the clients that are deserving of having a frictionless experience on Filecoin continue to get that. Quick screenshot from Textiles FIPP Plus Notary Stats. Not really substantive changes here, other than clearly like the amount of days that things are open are starting to drop. My hypothesis for this is that our auto close bot is doing a good job. So thanks all to those of you that helped shape that in the conversations over the last couple of months. But that thing basically takes care of issues that have been latent for too long. And so that's certainly bringing the latency and the median sort of open days down, just because issues that aren't getting any traction are getting closed out automatically, which is good. It's also helping signal to clients that they shouldn't just wait infinitely to hear back from a notary and can proceed with either reaching out to another notary or next steps. But this does lead me to believe that we probably need to make it a little easier for notaries to trade clients, or notaries to basically transition clients over when they don't necessarily have the time to handle it, or the DataCap, or the desire maybe to grant the DataCap to that specific client. Cool. I guess before we jump into this, any general thoughts, or anybody want to express anything regarding DataCap or DataCap flow. Any immediate reactions to anything that I've said?
Hi, Deep. It's Meg.
Hi, Meg. Go for it.
I guess it's maybe two questions. Is there going to be a notary onboarding or something where you can run us through? I suppose we observe these meetings and we see that applications are happening, and we're going to run an experiment with a client, but we're facing some issues. So maybe someone that could guide us through how to do this, or some onboarding would really help.
Yeah. Yes to that. That's on the agenda. We will discuss that when we hit the sort of notary elections like closeout section.
Awesome.
And you mentioned there were two things. Is there anything else that you wanted to flag?
Well, they were the two things. Like, will there be some onboarding? And in our mapping out of how we onboard a client to give them DataCap, we feel like we're facing some issues, but I can see that others are able to do it. So how can we share that knowledge?
Sure. Yeah. So I think for the client side of things, that we should talk about now, because that is very relevant to this framing. So there's this repo, which is the client onboarding repo for Filecoin Plus, where if you go to github.com/Filecoin-project/ I think it's Filecoin Plus client onboarding with hyphens across the words. That's where there's some amount of minimal documentation, much of which has also been ported over to the official Filecoin docs. Gillen, if you have a second, if you could grab the link from the Filecoin docs, that would be super helpful. But that sort of walks through like the nicer UI sort of version of this, which is you go to the Fill Plus registry app, you find a notary from whom you want to receive DataCap, and you fill in some minimal information about yourself, which then automatically generates an issue in that repo that I just mentioned, which serves as like the tracking for that particular client. And so interaction between the notary and the client happens in that GitHub repo. And then there's like a thing that a notary will paste in, which will be part of the onboarding docs that says like, write a message of this format. And based on that, the bot will effectively acknowledge that, oh, like this DataCap allocation needs to happen. Actually, in your case, it's not even that. You would sign into the registry app once you have your ledger and you're approved for signing into the app. And you just be able to, it's like a click on the application that you want to approve as a notary and then press an approve button kind of thing.
I think that all makes sense, but it's more the logistics, like literally talking about from small data onboarding to large data, like how are others doing that, managing risk, and retrieval at this early stage. So it's more that kind of stuff. And I think maybe I'll take it offline with you, and you can direct me to some of the businesses who are doing it, and I can pick it up with those guys just to learn from their learnings.
I see. Okay, so this is even a more meta question of like, what are best practices for deal making on Filecoin in a way, or best practices for onboarding data onto the network?
Onboarding, I think the deal making, but the onboarding,
Yeah, so sorry, my internet was giving out briefly, but I think I catch what you're talking about. Yeah, we can definitely take it offline, but I would almost say, if you don't mind, let's talk about it for another 30 seconds or so, because I'm sure somebody will watch this recording and gain something from it as well. So the first thing I would suggest is the Filecoin Plus channel in Slack has a ton of really active clients and notaries, many of whom are in the call right now that participate in various data onboarding programs. I don't want to call names, but there's plenty of folks here that have participated in deal making at scale, deal testing at scale, participating in competitions like Slingshot, specifically onboarding data at a large scale, either with miners they directly correspond with their own or just strangers. And then some of the folks in this call as well are like minor X fellows that are actively working day to day on like deal testing. And so I would almost say like hey, like, do you have any guidance for my first deal kind of thing? That's a completely reasonable thread to start in the Filecoin Plus channel. There's also a Phil deal making channel that I think Jennifer kicked off, who's also in the call at the moment, in Filecoin Slack, where we see some like offline coordination happening. Or I think Phil Deal Market, maybe what it's called. Yeah, Phil Deal Market. She just dropped it in the chat. And so there's like advertisements, negotiation, and things like that between like the two sides of the marketplace. That could be interesting. And then I would say the remainder of it is sort of captured in the doc, like the respective docs for the client that you're using. So in the case of using Lotus, which Many people are right now just because it's the implementation that's available at the moment. Others are coming on, and obviously we expect the network to diversify. But at this point in time where most people are using Lotus, there was a big sort of effort in the last several months to improve the onboarding path to Filecoin when using Lotus. So there's now like a tutorial that goes end to end for a client who goes and gets DataCap from the automated notary and learns how to make their first deal. Of course, it's at a smaller scale. It's like 32 GB, but at least you sort of go back and see the entire flow. And then there's like a retrieval to it, which is like, how do you do a retrieval once you've done that storage deal? And then I am personally working on publishing better documentation for offline data transfer. So like data transfer doesn't happen on the network, which would be applicable to much larger scale, like data onboarding. So cases in which you need to make deals that are at like the multi-hundred tebibyte or the pebibyte range, where you need to have that coordination where you don't want to take a reliance on the bandwidth or the network itself, but would rather coordinate in some way with the different storage providers to get that data over to them, whether that's through using cloud-based storage options, using non-cloud-based but still software-based storage options, or dumping something on a hard disk and putting it on a truck and shipping several hard disks to people. There are a few ways you can do that. And so just improving the guidance around that is something that I'm specifically addressing. And so I'd love to chat about ways in which we can make it easier to understand. Cool. All right, with that, I think I'm going to move on to the next topic, just in the interest of time. And then Meg, let's definitely chat about it either happily in one of those Slack channels as well, if that would be preferred. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Sweet. Of course. So on the large data set notary front, quick refresher, we're looking at several applications now. I think we're at 14 in total, which require 7 notaries to sign on. So many of you that are just becoming notaries, I know some of you are already involved. So like Emma and a few others were already signing on. I think Bytebase was there, and a few others were already like signing on to or being willing to be participating in the multi-sig. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. And for those of you that are just getting elected as notaries, feel free to check out the list of issues. That's a place where you can have like a disproportionate, highly leveraged impact on Filecoin as a notary, where even though your allocation individually, because of the rubric, might be much smaller, like 10 tebibytes, 100 tebibytes, through the large data set notary multi-sig setup, you can influence a client that's looking at 5 tebibytes of DataCap and severely improve the rate at which they can onboard onto the network. There's a lot of like interesting applications there. We've had a few of them come present. And so I'd like to just spend a second on just highlighting that this is something that everybody should be doing. Even if you're not a notary, helping the community or helping the notaries do the due diligence is awesome. There's a couple of issues where community members have asked questions of these clients, which has been great to see, where they just want to learn more about the background of the client, the funding of the projects, how the DataCap will be used, the deal strategy, and things like that. And so if you are just a community member and a stakeholder of any kind in the Filecoin network, which you could be a minor, a different client, ensuring that this process works for us. And by works, I mean not just that the clients get DataCap, but rather the right clients get the right amount of DataCap. And we do it in a way that we can continue to scale up and build trust with these clients and generally scale up the operations of Filecoin Plus. This is a phenomenal opportunity to influence the way in which this program will shape data onboarding onto the network. And so I would highly suggest that you take a second to review the applications there, perhaps after this call. I have a little prompt on the next slide anyway to talk about some feedback on how we can make that easier. And so I'll ask you to hold your comments for that. But before we dive into that, a couple of things that have come up in past calls. So the first one, thanks to Julian, what are the expectations of actually being a notary on this multi-sig? How much time would you expect this to take? And what does it mean to be a lead notary? And is it difficult, et cetera? And so just wanted to, we chatted about this in the last call briefly, and I just wanted to drop this here as guidance for those of you that are becoming new notaries. So for each of these large data sets that we choose to support, there's 7 notaries that will sign on to a multi-sig. And then one of those should elect or be elected as like a lead notary. And the responsibility of the lead notary is that you are like the DRI for ensuring that the client is actually compliant with their application. So that could mean weekly, you just check in on the various dashboards that are being built, and the dashboards themselves are being built in a way that this should be as easy as possible. but you're just checking things like, are they actually using the DataCap? Are they actually using it with the pool of miners that they suggested that they would, or in a fair way and distributing it across a large set of miners? Are there deals that are actually happening at the rate that was expected? And are these deals valid? Which is as simple as just going to Filefox and just looking at some of the messages. And so I would suggest that the work of the lead notary here is not substantively more than a few minutes a week. The only other thing is that the lead notary is also responsible for like prompting that a new DataCap amount is allocated to the client. So that's just like copy pasting the raw comment in a specific format that basically prompts the bot to kick off the proposal process to the multi-sig for a DataCap allocation to go through. And then if you're a notary that's on the multi-sig, but not the so-called lead notary, then you're effectively doing the same things other than you're not actually responsible for adding in that comment. But other than that, you should be checking in on the client actions and client behavior as well, sort of intermittently or on a weekly basis. I would still hope that that's like at the magnitude of like minutes in a week. But if anybody has any thoughts or wants to share an opinion on this, now's a great time.
Who is supposed to trigger audit?
I would say the lead notary probably would trigger it. In the case that something wasn't working, you would just flag it. And that would be as simple as either creating an issue in the notary governance thing or just posting a comment that says, hey, something looks off here. Let's hold off on sort of giving additional DataCap grants for now. And we can talk about it in the issue itself or in the next governance call.
When we were managing like individual clients individually, like smaller clients, usually we ask the question, we ask the client to comply with the fact that we may audit them and they may share their data content with us, so we can just look at what they are storing on the network. When we do this large data set, I don't know if someone asked the question to the clients to ensure that they agree in advance to share or to allow notaries to look at the data. Is it something we should template and ask by default or put in the terms and conditions of Filecoin Plus?
What do you think?
I think we should put it by default in Filecoin Plus. That should be part of the conditions to apply.
That they share the data and it's completely public.
Maybe it's not public, but even if it's private data, they should, like, notary are people they should trust if they want to apply to this project.
Okay, so what would be a good way in which maybe one option is like, if asked, they should be able to produce a sample of some of the content and maybe share it privately, either like Google Drive or some solution whereby a notary can actually see like what some of the content might be. Okay, yeah, I think it makes sense to make that a policy. I think one of the things we talked about, Julian, extensively before even extending and creating this program was to ensure that nothing was stored through this program that couldn't be publicly verified, right? We talked about it being for public data sets or for clients that weren't going to encrypt the info. And I think for the first iteration of this, like the first set of clients that we do from the 50 petabytes we set aside for this, yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. And so putting it in the guidance makes sense to me. Maybe a good next step there is I could draft something briefly and share it in the channel and get some folks' opinions.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Any other questions, thoughts, comments on notary expectations? Yeah.
I have another one, sorry. Do you plan to explain the multi-sig process to us so how we can like sign this? So could we have a quick demo or something like this?
Yes, absolutely. I like the framing. Yes, the answer is absolutely yes, we will. I was wondering if the right forum to do that would be in a governance call or in like, and this is something I was going to discuss at the last slide, but we were hoping to do some sort of like notary office hours type thing, where we like help some of the new notaries on board and get set up with the app and the ledger. And in that, they're learning the flow of how the issue comments influence things and doing the same for like how to participate in the multi-sig. So we're hoping to do that sometime in the coming weeks to enable. I also have documentation that I've been drafting that I'm planning to just put on the repo that should just show you easily, like, here's the exact comment structure, here's how you message. Because it's as simple as like the lead notary dropping a comment in the actual issue that says like, here's the client address, and then here's the amount of DataCap, and that's literally it. Okay. And so when that happens, everything else happens at the back end, where it looks like it actually looks the same as a client application when they come in, where if you log into the app, you see a row. So there's like a new table that says large data sets, and then there's a row for that application, and all the notaries on the multi-sig get prompted to approve it the same way they do today.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
But I think it's definitely worth covering in like an office hour session.
Thank you.
Sweet. And then the second topic that sort of has been around in these conversations regarding the LDN support has been support for Slingshot. So this was flagged because of the Rice Genomes, or 3000 Rice Genomes project that was looking for lots of DataCap. I think there's been a decent amount of back and forth, and I don't think there's like a broad community consensus. Some notaries were supportive. Some notaries were supportive if and only if it's like a client that isn't doing any self-dealing. And then some notaries were against supporting DataCap for Slingshot, because Slingshot's already an incentivized program where clients are getting rewards. I think at this point, like, it's still open for discussion. It would be great to hear some opinions from new notaries. It doesn't have to be today, but this is something you should think about and definitely like see if you'd like to support or generally believe that Filecoin Plus should be supporting initiatives like this. If there's any immediate opinions, feel free to drop something in the chat or unmute and discuss. I'll give it a minute just to see if there's anyone that has any thoughts. Cool. I think this will be an ongoing discussion anyway. So feel free to think about this one and see if you have a strong opinion, and we can chat either in Slack or in GitHub or at the next call. So with that, wanted to flag that 3 applications have had 7 notaries that have elected themselves to serve on the client application on the multi-sig. I think a lot of this was wrangling on behalf of the clients directly. I know JV was definitely going around and seeing if people would be willing to support his applications to ensure he got the DataCap. But I do want to remind the notaries that are participating that there's 11 additional open applications. Some of these have been open up for a while. Definitely some really cool and interesting use cases. Would recommend taking a look and seeing if you have any thoughts on this. Thanks, Galen, for dropping the link in the chat. So yeah, I mean, we have 50 petabytes, right? And so even if these top 3 go through, I think each of those requested between 3 and 5. So say it's 5, that still leaves us with 35 petabytes that we want to go and support. And yeah, lots of really cool use cases. So I would highly recommend, notaries definitely go check this out, but also everybody else, as I mentioned. And so with that sort of leads me to a little bit of a discussion I wanted to suggest that we have today on what are ways in which we can make the review process easier and more efficient, and also maybe encourage people in the community to help. Because effectively, the ones that got a lot of traction very quickly, or it was like forced by like prompting on Slack through like client directly interacting with notaries. But the ones that didn't get as much traction are just sort of sitting open. And so I wanted to throw up some bullets on like, maybe like, what do we think about success for this program? And then based on that, like, how can we shape better engagement on the open applications? So if we were to define success for this iteration of like large data set notary support, like at least in the initial opinion, I would propose basically that we want to get 50 petabytes out. We probably want to do it across at least 10 projects, because we put a cap of 5 per project anyway, but also that we want diversity of projects. That means that the DataCap available to clients will increase almost 20x. If you look at the numbers today, especially when we were setting up the program, it was like 500 petabytes, 600 petabytes of DataCap available to clients. So that's going to go up massively. And then the DataCap used by clients should go up, but the DataCap used should be more than proportional, because I would expect that clients that are participating in this program are doing things at scale. And once they overcome that initial friction of making deals that like Meg was referring to, going beyond your first deal should be substantively easier than doing your first deal. And so that could be interesting. And then I think the biggest thing for us is we learn about how we interacted with clients, whether or not it was efficient and effective in line with the goals of Filecoin Plus. Did we actually make it easier for clients to get the DataCap they needed? Did we actually enable deal making on Filecoin at scale? And so with those sort of principles in mind, or any others that you might want to share, would love to have like a few minute discussion on things that we can do to make the application review process better. I see some things in chat already. So Jennifer is proposing maybe we have one monthly call where notaries gather together and just go through the applications. Yeah, I think it's a great idea to review some of the apps together. Jennifer, we actually had, for the first like 5 or 6, we actually had the clients come and present. So like TopIPI and a few others, like the clients came to the call and talked for a few minutes. I would love to hear what people thought of that, like if that was efficient or a good use of time, and if that's like one way in which we'd like to review applications. There was a initial part of the proposal, I think, and Julian, I don't know if you remember this, but one of the things we talked about was giving each of these like large data set applications like 2 weeks to get DataCap. But obviously these have been open for much longer, and like no one's actually like policing or saying that they shouldn't be open. And theoretically we could, but I feel like that's not really useful at the moment because we're still trying to figure out like how to make the friction of engagement lower, and we'd like to ensure people talk. So yeah, maybe notary governance clause include that. There's Stephen is proposing, I'd like to see apps along with the large data cap requests, which means the data storing in Filecoin is retrievable and useful. Does that mean it means, oh yeah, like applications like actually like the web use cases or the use cases of the info, right? Yeah, it looks like there's chats further below. Stephen, feel free to unmute as well if you're comfortable and share.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, because I also granted some data caps for some clients, but I really want to say the data have been stored in Filecoin. Yeah, could be retrieved. It can be useful for any applications. Especially if the data is private data. For me, it's very hard to verify or to validate. If the data cap is used
properly.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good point. So a few of the apps, like the one that JV did for NFT storage, I think there was a TopIPI one. There were a few that like actually linked to a website, and it was like, hey, you can go look at the website. And once the data cap is being used, you'll be able to access it. I think the estuary one said that everything would be available at least on IPFS as well as through Filecoin for retrievals. So some of them are like supporting web pages where you can go and prove it, but not all of them are. And so I think that should be a question that we should just ask the clients. Like, where is this info actually going to be useful? How do you show that like the community at scale will benefit from it? So I really like that. Like, I think a good first step there, Stephen, could be just asking the question on the app. And then maybe we just make that part of the application template as well. Like more officially, we say like, we add like a field that says, where will this info be visible? Because I don't think that's a field right now. So some of them are sharing that info, but not all of them are, which is interesting. Okay, we have Suhal with your hand up. Do you want to go for it?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. How are you?
Yeah, so from our like previous experience, I feel like JV is like doing quite well job on the applications. So I'm wondering, like for new applicants, are they like able to access to us like through the Slack? Because like JV clearly know our names on Slack, and so they can like contact me.
Yeah,
they can contact us like directly. So I'm not sure like these new applicants like have a way to like reach out to us through Slack.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So I think step one there is maybe like educating these clients that like the Filecoin Plus channel exists, right? Because all of you are in that channel anyway. So regardless of like being able to DM you. And then the second would be seeing if people are comfortable. Like, how did you feel about like a client DMing you on Slack? Was that okay with you? Or do you think that's too much? Or would you prefer it because it helps you engage with these applications?
Yeah, I think it's much better because it just make our like work more efficient. I don't have to like check it like daily with my Slack, because if they direct message us, the message will just pop up. So
Right. Okay. What about other notaries? Are you generally comfortable with that? Because, well, I mean, in the past, we've talked about like publishing, like not just your Slack, your GitHub IDs, but also Slack. But then we went back and forth, and then we didn't do it after the first round of elections. But maybe we just add to the table where all of your GitHub handles are listed with your application IDs. You could just add Slack too if you're comfortable. Good for me. Thanks, Julian. I think it's something to think about. I also think it's hard to say no to this because of the way in which this question is being asked of you, because it's all recorded and now everybody will know when you said no, don't share my Slack. So I don't think this is a fair fair way to ask this. Maybe we have this conversation in the Notary Slack channel and just make sure people are okay with it.
Yeah, to present the alternative opinion here, like I think that there's something great about having the asks and the posts and things like all in the public FIPP Plus channel and our reactions to them, because then I do think that it will allow new people to see maybe how much work it takes, like how much shepherding a client needs to do to get a large data set approved. Whereas if it starts happening more and more in DMs, we're just hiding kind of how much work that is for longevity for a new client to look back and say, like, well, how did estuary get approved, right? They can go search all those different messages and see. So just some thoughts on keeping things in the open, but creating like an open channel that maybe is a little more filtered rather than just the parent FIPP Plus channel.
Yeah.
Versus going in a direction of let's just see who's comfortable getting DM'd.
Yeah. One thing we could do is, how in Slack you can create like notification tags? Like we could do like an @notaries where everyone's Slack handle is taggable and create a thread for each application. Because I think that in general, Slack notifications are easier for people than GitHub notifications, but I don't know if that's true. I would love to hear from the notaries in the room right now. Like, would you rather be notified, even if it's like a generic notification on Slack that, hey, there's an application that's worth your time to review? Or is like the little GitHub bell enough for you and you can just check that like once a week or something? Because I also don't know how much additional notification work we need to do if we go back to the model of like even say every notary governance call, if we say, 20 minutes out of the call guaranteed is a discussion on a large data set application. And we'll bring in as many clients as we can and they can make their case. And if we do that, then do we even need like so much robust engagement in Slack and GitHub? I don't know, because all of this is getting recorded. And so, yeah, I would love to hear what the opinions are, what the trade-offs are for folks, what they're comfortable with. Okay, so it looks like in the last 4 messages I got, GitHub is good, email is good, Slack is good, and ha 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 ha. So
like ignore the ones saying push notification to the ledger and have it vibrate in my safe before I said ha ha ha.
Oh, I didn't even see that one. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I guess Julian, your GitHub creates an email and sends it to you, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Maybe we try going back to like actively engaging the clients in these calls to begin with, and then see what the traction looks like. And then based on that, we can get better about engaging on Slack and the more public Slack channels.
Yeah, so I've got a few clients that came to me directly.
Yeah.
And each time I was proposing them just to reach out to you and see if they can have like a 5-minute slot to present something to all the notaries.
Yeah.
It has more impact than just trying to negotiate with each notaries and explaining the project individually.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. I don't think many of them reached out, but also Julian, you know how good I am about looking at my DMs sometimes. So I think we should proceed with that for sure.
I think there is hundreds of them actually that reach out to you, but
hundreds.
The message.
Oh, okay, Julian, hundreds.
The bad statistics is all because of you.
Wow.
I'm French, okay? So this is all about the joke. Okay.
I'm not offended, not at all.
Okay. I
won't remember this for 100 years.
J'espère.
Cool. Yeah, I think we should definitely like bring in the clients to the calls. We tried that. It was pretty effective the first time, so that might be good for sure. And then, yeah, I think if notaries are comfortable with publishing the Slack handles, we can start adding that to the repo at least, so some clients know where to go. And then based on that, we can start looking at like more efficient methods of notification. Sounds good to me. Cool. If that's good, then I would say the action item for those of you here, regardless of whether or not you're a notary, is check out these apps, drop some comments, see if you have any questions for them, see if there's something you'd like to support as a notary, or if you think they should or should not receive support. Jennifer in the chat said these are all for public data sets. Jennifer, yes, the expectation is that all the data being stored here is public, but that doesn't mean it's like always like a curated public data set. So an example of this is Estuary made the case that all the data is public, but they don't always necessarily know what the data is because it's clients of Estuary that want to do deal testing with it. But all of it will be open and accessible. Same with like I think one of the ones where we had Tao Pai Pai come, they explained that like the photos themselves had open rights, so anybody could access the photos that were being stored. But it could be photographers who are uploading new photos. And so I think that's the point of differentiation between like having public data sets that are like open curated sets of data from like, I don't know, NASA Internet Archive versus data itself that is inherently open and accessible to the public. Let's hop on to the next segment on notary elections and onboarding. So first up, just wanted to say that we're in process. I sent a bunch of proposal messages to root key holders. I think some of them have already signed. I've seen like notifications that some of the signatures are coming in. This is a table of what the state was yesterday. So if anybody has since responded between yesterday and today, I have not updated this yet. But basically, we have addresses on chain for every notary except for 4. So if you're here, Filecoin Foundation, we need you to affirm stuff. Bytebase, we're waiting for the ledger-based address to come in. Wayne, we need you to affirm stuff. And then hold on, once you have the ledger set up, happy to help you walk through like getting the address. But those are the outstanding ones. I think everybody else was able to get an address. All the notaries that previously had grants have opted to go with their previous addresses, which I think should be easier. And so hopefully, barring any random issues in the bot and the interaction with the chain, should be smooth. And the same address that you're using should automatically get topped up to the limit. That also means we don't need to do any funky mathematics because we don't have to go and subtract max eligible data cap from existing data cap from the max eligible one. We can just top it back up to what you qualified for and chose to take, which I think is good. And so from an onboarding perspective, here are the following steps. So one is there's a doc that was drafted up for the previous round of notary elections. That was like the notary onboarding doc to the Filecoin app. I'm working on updating that briefly before I link it out, but I will be sending it out to all the notaries in the Filecoin Plus notaries channel, which is a separate channel than the generic Filecoin Plus channel on Slack. And so that way you'll have all the instructions for getting set up. If for whatever reason you are not in that channel by the end of the week, please let me know because I think I should be able to get all of you there and share the instructions. But the more interesting topic that we want to talk about was like, we've had a lot of new notaries express that they want to speak with existing notaries to help learn more about experiences, onboarding, understand how to do some things. And so that plus the addition of what Julian was suggesting early in the call on like how do these things actually happen, whether it's for just new client applications or multi-sig applications. Wanted to propose, Galen had the great idea of saying, why don't we just have a call with everybody who's willing to come, where we just frame it as the notary office hours, where we can do like onboarding for new notaries, onboarding for notaries on multi-sig, interaction like one-on-one in breakout rooms between new notaries and existing notaries if they're open to that, to chat about experiences, and maybe like a notary showcase. I know Andrew Hill in the past has suggested doing this as well, where he was like happy to share his rubric and talk about how he had made changes to it or how he uses it. And so with that in mind, I think it would be awesome to host something like this. Any sort of immediate reactions in the chat on whether or not this is something you'd want to come to, or would be useful, or would be interesting, or if you're an existing notary, would you be open to sharing your experiences and your processes? That would be awesome. I can work on scheduling something. Maybe we can do it at a similar time slot as one of the notary governance calls, or maybe we do 2 of them to handle all the time zones. Something like that can be achieved to ensure that everybody can be there. We could probably also do something like, the half an hour before the next 2 notary governance calls, or something like that, like some solution where it doesn't disrupt your daily schedules too much. If anybody has any suggestions on that too, I would absolutely love to hear them.
Yes. This is Julian speaking. Hi, Deep.
Hello. I haven't heard your voice. So nice to hear.
I'm going to mute myself.
No, I'm joking. I'm sorry, Julian. I'm sorry. This is great. Please go forward.
So no, I think that when I look at the scores of the different notaries, the scorecard that we used, to elect the different notaries. And do you think it could be? I think it could be great if the top rated one for some items can explain and the process they want to they have in place for us, so we can improve our own way of managing these different items.
That's awesome. I really like that suggestion. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think that'd be great. That one, I think I would suggest that we do that like maybe in a few weeks in preparation for the next round of elections or something like that. But I think that's a really, really good idea.
Okay. Thank you, Deep.
Thank you. Great suggestion. Okay, so it looks like we should definitely do this like office hours type format. I see some support for it, or enough support at least in the chat. Well, I think what we need to do is just figure out what time zone and like where to make this work, so I can just quickly poll folks on the on Slack, and then we can take it from there.
Deep,
Yes.
for Australia, because we're all the way down the bottom, we don't mind starting at 7 a.m. Like we don't mind an earlier slot, which makes it better for the Northern Hemisphere.
Okay, so I think the tricky thing is always balancing West Coast plus Europe plus China, and it not being like absurdly late at night for you, or even earlier. And so what we may need to do is do 2 sessions, which I think is fine. Like if we did 2 times 45 minutes or 2 times 30 minutes, that might be, and we could just do it at like, reasonable slot for Australia and North America, and then reasonable slot for China and Europe, kind of a thing. That might be like the way we do notary governance calls. Basically, it might be worth just investing in that time, because I think this is something that it's probably valuable to be there live, more so than like watching the recording for like a governance call like we're having right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so let's chat about it on Slack and see what the easiest way would be to do. But yeah, thank you for being flexible. Really appreciate it. Let's see how we can make this work.
No problem.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, we have something in the chat. Yeah, before the governance call could be, we could do like 30 minutes before the next 2 calls or something. Jonathan, as I mentioned, that one thing that came to mind though was like, I don't know if we want to wait 4 weeks though, right? Because the next notary governance call, this slot, is 4 weeks away, which feels like a lot. I would almost be like, let's just see if we can find a slot in the next 2 weeks for everybody to be able to attend. And so that's the sort of trade-off to ensure that we're not generating too much lag in activating new notaries that you currently have the energy and the excitement to get going.
Personally, I'd love to see something next week. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, I think the general like lift for doing something like this is not too high, right? Because a lot of the content already exists. It's about pulling people into the room and making sure that people are able to make it from a scheduling perspective. And so I'm not too worried. And then Julian's already nominated himself to run the sessions in the chat, so I think we're in really good shape.
Julian, I think you've got a lot more stamina than us. I'm not sure how smart we'll be at 1 a.m, but we can do early though.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. We'll find a time, and I'll make sure that we're not putting too much pressure on Julian. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. No worries. Nice. Okay, so with that, I think we should head off to the next topic. We have about 10 minutes left, so I think we're making good time. So there's two issues to discuss based on what I saw in GitHub. The first one is around issue number 195 that I think Stephen started. If you want to talk about it, or if anybody who participated on the issue wants to talk about it, feel free to unmute and take over. If not, I can sort of kick off the discussion, and then we can probably chat in like just an open discussion format. Okay, maybe I'll do that, and then we can talk. I see something in the chat. Nice. Okay. For those of you watching the recording, there's a bunch of trip planning apparently to Hawaii happening. Regardless, for issue 195. So this issue is around how do we validate private data that's being stored by verified clients, or what are ways in which we can verify clients that need to store private data and ensure that they're following through. And so one thing I wanted to flag is that like the way in which Filecoin Plus has been set up is, at least in the short term, definitely more focused on public data. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't start thinking about this. Like in many cases, it's clients that cannot even onboard onto the network until we have a path like this. And so at least starting to think about it and coming up with ways makes a lot of sense to me. I wanted to divide the conversation into two parts where it was like, hey, what can we do before verifying a client, or before like the data cap has been allocated? And then what can we do once the data cap has been allocated? And so for the before part, like specifically, I guess the prompt for the room is like, what are ways in which we can build trust about the client that don't necessarily require access to encrypted data? I know Fenbushi has come up with a way in which they see access like some limited amount of the data. Maybe you have something to share from your processes. Other notaries that have worked with clients in the past, or those of you that are clients or are familiar with client requirements here, would love to hear about ways in which we as a community can build trust for these kinds of clients before we even give them the data cap. So let's spend a few minutes talking about that if anybody has thoughts to share, and then we can talk about like looking at post data cap allocation as well. And I know some of you who participated in the GitHub issue, because there were already a few comments, are in the call right now. Feel free to share your thoughts in chat or unmute if you're comfortable.
Yeah, so like for Fenbushi, for us, like we first of all like check the data, their description on their data, and to see like what if there's like any problem with that, and then like if necessary, we will ask them to like provide a deck of their like business itself to see like if there will be like some potential problem on that. So like basically we just need to let the clients provide more materials about their like data to prove that and their data is like legit. They won't be like I mean involving some like illegal data such as porn or something like that, and to see like they have like legit process to filtering this data, or like pre-process their data so that their data won't be like having like problems to be saved on the network. And also like we did like check on their all kinds of official license issued by the government, something like that, to see like they're actually running this business. So for example, we actually asked them to provide their long contract. So to see like if yes, the company is really existed. So this is like basically what we were doing for our like previous applications.
Any thoughts on that from other notaries or people who have opinions on how we could make this process standardized maybe, or accessible to other notaries as well?
Okay. And I also I also receive some applications, from some clients to save, private data, and they claim, all the data are private, and they how to encrypt all the data into the system. So, I asked their business license, and we have some deals, and also, I check the samples. But okay, I think this is good. This is a start, but while the as a start, I think it's okay. Well, after the first DataCap is used up, they will ask more, right? For example, they will have much larger DataCap. But the question is, we could make sure that to have a contract to make sure the miner and also the client to guarantee that they have the obligation to make sure their data are compliant with the local local governance or regulation. But how to avoid the self-dealing, and I think that is also the question, right? Because okay, and the miner can work with a client together to make just for example to save some garbage data to get 10 times power. That is the hard part for me.
I think like in general that's been a massive challenge, right? Like you never know what the association is between a client and a miner, because miners can be invented every day. And so we should talk about that. I have some suggestions, but I'd love to hear more. Before we dive into that, 2 hands went up. Jonathan, want to go for it, and then Galen?
Yeah, so we've been chatting to a university about storing their data on the network. Now, as we've been chatting to them and we've been chatting to other people, that you can really drop people into kind of social trust layers, i.e. if we take university data, you can trust that a lot more than if we went to a small reseller that sells data, would use that data storage for their needs, right? I just feel like we could rank them in a kind of a social hierarchy, because you're not gonna, a university is not gonna allow you to see lots of their data because it's quite sensitive. So there just needs to be some kind of ranking system, I think, from for the SLA, depending on the client.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, is there like the other thing though, Jonathan, is like a university is also not likely to have stuff that would be problematic either, hopefully. Like I don't know, like in terms of, it depends, I guess, what the kind of research is, but hopefully yeah.
So all the data, when you go to university, you create all this data, all your assignments, all those kind of things, they get stored, for 7 years or 20 years, depending on the university. There's going to be nothing problematic in there. However, they are going to have to be encrypted.
Yeah.
And just another one, they do have to stay on Australian soil, and they also do have to be with miners that are they can't be with miners that don't show who they are in Australia, because university is not going to put their data with any random people.
Yeah, I think there's an element. What I'm hearing from what you're saying is that there are certain like end-to-end flows that exist where all the hands are trustable enough that like not having all the data makes it more okay for us to support as a community, right? That's like my interpretation a little bit, where you're saying it's university, they can share their entire methodology for how they're processing the data. They have a very clear set of requirements on where the data can end up. They've got contracts that show who the miners are, or miners themselves are willing to share info about themselves like publicly, to the point where like everyone's like comfortable with like this equation. So in those cases, like, does that make it okay for us to give like a massive DataCap grant because they're willing to talk about it, or there's like an academic paper published on like how this info is stored? Yeah, like maybe that's good enough. Like I don't know. But that certainly feels like a fair proposal.
Yeah, and what I've looking at the technical side, there's actually only very few miners in this region that can facilitate what the data that they want to store as well. So in the network governance, it would be kind of, you know, the data might only go to 2 or 3 miners. So then there's a cap at 20%. So they would be breaking that rule as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you want to move forward as a network and get bigger, you know, you kind of have to push forward with it, I think.
Push forward in like ensure, like sometimes just letting us allow clients to do less distribution of data because that's what gives them like their comfort in making the deals, or push forward in that like using this as a mechanism to force new miners to pop up and serve demand.
Well, I mean, it's not the client that's forcing it, and it's not the miner that's forcing it. It's government regulation.
Right, because of regional requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that makes sense. We also we had this provision previously on self-dealing for like regular like data cap utilization that said in regions where like you only have 3 miners that can serve your needs, then it's obvious that we don't expect you to meet like the 20% requirement. But that didn't, I don't think we included that in when we were designing the large data set thing. And so maybe that's like an issue or a specific discussion worth happening where certain large data set notary supported clients, if they're in a region where they can provably show, and maybe there's a way in which we do, like lots of government practices exist like this in the real world too, where it's like hey, post a public ad that shows that you're looking for something, and nobody was willing to respond. I'm not saying these are efficient ways to do it, but processes like this do exist in real life as well. And so that's, worth thinking about a little more.
Yeah, I think if we take an Australian client that has 1 petabyte and they're gonna basically put that on 2 miners, they need to go to a US notary, get it signed off, and then it can happen over here. I think that's the most transparent way to happen. Yeah, I think that's probably the best solution.
Yeah, bringing in the regional sort of unbiased input as well. Yeah. That makes sense. Galen, you had a hand up.
Yeah, it's okay. We can also save it for another time. But I think just in terms of talking through this, it could be useful to talk out the unhappy paths, just so that like we have the same shared language. Like what are the ways that this goes off the rails? What are the things we're afraid of, right? Like there's also just this question of like, what's our level of safe enough to try?
Yeah.
You know, for risk tolerance, because I don't think that we will be able to like clearly define rules and rubrics that can work for like all different cases across the world for like high trust. And so the question is like, how much do we need to write out like these risk profiles? So that it could be like that. I think that could be like a conversation another time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that was also sort of what Stephen was alluding to. Sorry to call on you directly, Stephen, but one of the things that you were talking about was like, it's very hard to validate the actions of somebody in a completely trustless peer-to-peer network. But what are like patterns that we can find, or what are like usage indicators that we can see in the way deals are being made, miners are being corresponded with, or contracts are being signed that allow us to build that trust with that client, both prior to an application and after like giving somebody data cap. Because based on how we agree on or align on, like, as you're saying, Galen, as a community, if we're aligned on the things that we consider to be anti-patterns or patterns we don't want to support, then we can use that to specifically come up with pattern matching or processes that allows us to ensure that the clients that are doing like what we believe is the right thing are the ones receiving the support to continue doing it at scale. And then bringing in ways of like reducing bias, like Jonathan's talking about, could be interesting too. Yeah, there's an interesting suggestion in the chat from Galen. Might be worth filing an issue about that one. Galen, high risk data cap, so less multiplier with less trust from a client. Could be interesting. We're almost at the hour, and so actually we're past the hour now. So I know we're running out of time. I did want to highlight this one too, because we didn't get a chance to talk about this as much because of the same reason. It was at the end of the deck and we ran out of time. So if for those of you that can stick around for a few minutes, I would greatly appreciate it. This one is a FIPP that was filed a few weeks ago, where the consideration was make a deal with a client, or a client can make a deal on the network that isn't verified to begin with, but may become verified at some point. And at that point, the sector can be upgraded. And so that's beneficial for clients because even if they have DataCap applications pending, they're not like stuck or blocked on this actually happening. Like they can go and get the DataCap application at some point in the future. Of course, there's feedback for us as stakeholders of Filecoin Plus, where people are thinking about ways in which we might be blocking them as a community. So of course, we should figure out our own processes and become more efficient. But regardless of that, looking at ways in which clients can become unblocked as soon as possible, whether that's testing or starting to onboard, because onboarding is expensive and takes time. So unblocking them from starting to do that. And then once a client receives DataCap in the future, upgrading that deal state effectively to say that this is actually now a verified deal, and upgrading the sector to ensure that the miner is being rewarded for storing verified deals, and then the client is being rewarded for going through the process of getting verified. So this is FIPP. It's a FIPP that was filed to allow upgrading of these deals, even though they've already been sealed. And so there was a couple of considerations on that were already flagged in the FIPP discussion. The first was like, I think it was Stephen actually that flagged this, which is like, how do we check for the data that's being stored over time and whether or not it's compliant over the duration, or like what happens before they get DataCap versus after? Are there methods that we could use for verifying data? So I think, Charles, if you're still here, you were also participating in this. And then a couple other folks, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think some folks on the call as well, there were some interesting questions around what happens to pricing, where a client could effectively, lie to a miner and say, hey, I'll get DataCap for this, and then never get DataCap. And so I end up getting a cheaper deal. The interesting implications of at what point that upgrade happens, because obviously, miner rewards go up substantively, but what about the, like the ratio of like, say, epochs left in the duration of the deal once it becomes verified versus not? And so there's still, lots to talk about here. I want to make sure that people that are in the room right now and those watching the recording understand like what the context is behind this. And so I think we shared a little bit of that. I'd also love to see if there's any immediate opinions and give you a chance to share either in chat or in voice. And then let's continue the conversation in GitHub at the link, or in Slack in the Filecoin Plus channel, or at the next Notary Governance call. But yeah, any immediate thoughts on this? Like what are your reactions, especially if you're a notary, a client, or a miner? What are your thoughts?
Yes, Julian speaking. Do we have any existing use case for this one?
I don't know if there's an explicit client use case. This is more proactive, I think, in that it came from folks that felt that either their clients or they themselves as clients were blocked on getting like DataCap before they could start with proceeding to onboard data onto Filecoin. So it was more that, hey, like, because onboarding rate can only be so high, and if DataCap is delayed like 14 days, 15 days, why not start onboarding right away and then upgrade the sector in the future?
From my understanding from whoever proposed this FIPP, is also like after hyperdrive, we have enabled so much more like storage space in the network, and they would love to utilize the network as soon as possible for their clients, or like, even like more clients in the ecosystem. A lot of like clients have a good public data set, and also a lot of them having like enterprise data sets, like private data sets right now, which Filecoin Plus doesn't support just yet. So what they're thinking is like that logic, that mechanism may happen coming in later as the Filecoin network grows, the ecosystem grows. However, they don't want to get blocked by that. So they want to get the data stored first and then have the possibility to upgrade the deals later. Another thing is, I think it's FIPP 16, which is already a draft in the FIPP repo. Everyone can take a look later as well. It's about packing arbitrary data in CC sectors. So as many of you here already know that publishing storage deal right now, the cost is pretty high. Of course, like core devs are working on like optimizations. However, it can take some like longer time to do that. So some miners has proposed the other FIPP is like, right now I can pack everything as like CC sector, so I don't have to pay for the published storage deal. However, in the future, but they want to pack verified data instead of just, random data, like basically all zeros right now, like for the CC sectors. So in the future, they can, like notaries can verify these data are actually good data, and then upgrade those CC sectors to verified deal sectors as well. So these two are sort of like tied together.
Yes. So okay. So we just discussed previously just about Slingshot. We know that for Slingshot there is a huge amount of deals that have been done, and many of them have been done like by self-dealing. I was just wondering if this type of FIPP could not be used by people just to allocate DataCap on their own deals later on. I mean, I will think that this could come, this type of FIPP should be linked to the FIPP that we discussed previously, to that we have some ways to slash DataCap if they are not allocated properly.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I was actually like thinking about the first point here under the consideration. So Stephen brought up like checks for client data being stored over time. So I was thinking like, so you guys know how we have disputer for window post. Maybe you can have something for similar for like, verified deals, like verified clients, something like that. We can have a disputer and to slash any malicious behavior, like on dishonest behavior. That can be pretty cool as well. And maybe it's even possible that it's a requirement, like to have such disputer mechanism is a part of the requirement, like a product consideration along with this FIPP and suggestion, in my opinion.
Julian, I also generally agree with your point that like these kinds of things should sort of be reversible. There's the other angle to this as well, where DataCap in and of itself, like we've thought about putting in, like a lot of notaries are already doing this thing where the first allocation is a small amount of what the client asked for, and then they're happy to give repeat allocations. And then when we built the multi-sig thing, we did the same thing where the first allocation is like 5% or whatever of the total allocation, and then that number goes up over time. And so we could also start standardizing practices like this to across more notaries and more client experiences with those notaries that add in like checkpoints for a client to prove that they're doing the right thing or using the DataCap in the right way or whatever.
We also highlight during the last time, the ceremony or the File Plus day that we had, that actually nobody never run any audit on their clients. So
that's true. I did some around the elections actually, and so at least 3 or 4 notaries had to provide a bunch of info for this round of elections. And so all of that is actually tracked in their applications. So I did finally get to do that. We exercised that muscle a little bit. I don't think in the future it should be me. It should be multiple people that are participating in that. But just because it was during the election cycle, it just happened that way. But yes, disputes are did show up, quote unquote, from me as I was like checking through some of the applications, and the tooling that was used there was like, checking the dashboards to see what was happening, what were the percentages of self-dealing between clients and miners and notaries and clients, and then what was the concentration of DataCap from a notary across all the miner IDs that are participating? Were there any disproportionate numbers there? How many allocations directly had issues that we could look at in GitHub, where all the conversation happened in GitHub versus happened in email? In what cases where the application disappeared, where was the documentation for every single application that was approved by a notary? like things like that level of investigation we were able to do for this round of elections, which yielded some good takeaways. Well, I don't think we are at the level where we need to be, but baby steps.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
But yeah, it would be great, participating in the conversation on this FIPP if you have any opinions. If not, let's continue actively thinking and discussing this.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I think that not having any way to slash at when the data cap is not used properly is just slowing down maybe other thing we want to put in place, because we are just maybe like slowing down because we don't know, or we need to add additional control and so on. I mean, when you have some ways to just, remove what has been allocated, then it's easier just to get more people doing things more easily and without control.
Yeah, it'd be great, Julian, if you could actually link your proposal FIPP as well into this one, to just tag those two together, because it makes sense to me for the discussion to happen on both.
Okay. Yeah. And I have a last one, because maybe you need to close the call. No?
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should talk about like renewing DataCap. Not data. Sorry, renewing the deals, the verified deals when they expire.
It's a good topic. Yeah.
Because there is many deals that are starting to expire, verified deals that are expiring, and we have just no way just to renew the deals and keep the data cap running on them. So
renew deals shouldn't be different for regular deals and verified deals. That's my gut, initially.
Yeah.
But definitely we should be talking about renewal deals sometime soon, or
even Yeah, even if they're the same, then Jennifer, the implication is we should educate clients to make sure they went and got additional data cap in time for those renewals.
Yeah, and also I'm wondering if our clients are actually, using data cap to store their data as long as possible, up to 540 days at the moment, or what's the duration of their general deals. I feel like that should be some interesting data to know about as well.
Yeah. Gillen, I think we were looking at this, right? Like stats on the average deal profile. I don't know if we have an answer off the top of our heads.
Because my point is when you have clients like Starling, they want to store data for dozens of years. If they have to renew all the deals every year and a half, and just need to reallocate to get new data cap and so on, just to renew the deal, for me it's like a very heavy process. Instead of just renewing the deal, they have to ask for new data cap and just reapply this data cap to the renewal and so on. I'm not sure we should go on this road, but happy to discuss about it.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Can you create an issue for it in the notary governance repo, and then let's chat about it? He's like, "Oh man, you're giving me even more work at 1:30 in the morning."
Yeah, I'm not going to talk anymore on this call.
All right. I think really appreciate the folks that were able to stay later. Thanks so much. Sorry, it was a little long today, but hopefully productive, interesting, lots of good topics, lots more to follow up on. So yeah, thanks so much for being here. For those of you that are watching the recording, try and join the next one when you can. Looking forward to seeing you in one of these calls.
Can I just ask one thing?
Yes.
How is my applications processing? It's do I need to manually grab enough notaries to support my application, or?
Faye, great question. So we chatted about this, I think right before you joined the call, where we were talking about ways in which we can get additional traction for the large data set notary applications. Because some of the apps that have gone through, literally the client DM'd the notaries and was like, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think?" And we were able to get traction like that, but that's not necessarily systematically feasible every single time. So there's a couple of proposals that came up in this call where for all the open applications, we should have the clients come in and present and start making more active decisions in the notary governance calls. So we'll start dividing a portion of the notary governance call for just this. In your case, I think it's very reasonable for you to choose to DM notaries. I think the better option would be if you just make a thread in Filecoin Plus channel and just say, hey, trying to find some notaries to support on this, and feel free to tag folks and just share any additional information on your application. I think that's a good way to go.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you so much, folks. Have a good rest of your day. Take care.